Richard Adams' Watership Down when, like, at the beginning with like the rabbits overgrazing, and Alaharal, basically the god of that world, told, well, Alaharal was the prince of rabbits, but Lord Frith, who was the lord of the world, when he told Alaharal that if he could not control his people, he would find ways to control them. And of course, the Prince of Rabbits wouldn't listen, and that gave birth to predators like the fox, the cat, the dog, the hawk, the wolf, and the weasel, all to prey on rabbits. But, as many of you know, rabbits breed like that. I mean, rabbits are pretty much everywhere. Of course, probably the largest warren of rabbits can be found in Dorset in southern England. Of course, here is the range of the rabbits in Britain. As you can see, as I mentioned, they're absolutely everywhere. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is probably our most elusive bird of prey. It is the sparrowhawk. Sparrowhawks are the second largest hawk in the UK, and second only to the goshawk, which I will get to later. But of course, how you tell them apart, male from female, is this one here is male. I mean, he has a greyish-blue back with an orange chest, but he's also a lot smaller. This is the female. She's bigger, she's stronger, and of course, she has a greyish-brown back. But also, so the male sparrowhawk can only catch songbirds like tits, finches, chiffchaffs, basically small songbirds. But the female can catch prey as big as pigeon or even jays. Of course, the female, as you can see, is the one who lays and incubates the eggs. And that can last for well over 33 days, and in that time it's the male's job to bring her food. And of course, sparrowhawks are ambush predators, and one thing they do is quite often they hunt birds in gardens on bird feeders, where they stay very low to the ground and use every bit of cover to get very, very close. And then in the last moment, they thrust their long legs forward and grab a hold of their prey. And then, boom! It's all over in the blink of an eye with nothing but the scattered feathers and the alarm calls of birds. Of course, fortunately, they're no danger to human beings, but you certainly wouldn't want to be a songbird or a garden bird with one of these on the prowl. And here, of course, is their range. Next animal I'm going to show you is one of our songbirds, and probably one of our most famous. It is the Song Thrush. Now, the Song Thrush can be heard living up to its name in spring, where it performs from the treetops to proclaim its breeding territory. Of course, as you can see here, there are two different kinds of thrush. There's the missel thrush and the song thrush. The missel thrush is a little bit bigger than the song thrush, but the main way you can tell them apart is to look how high up in the tree they're perched. While the missel thrush tends to favour the very top of the tallest tree, the song thrush will be found slightly lower down. And once the male has established his breeding territory, he will use his song, which is rich, vibrant, and croaky and rasping, to attract a mate. And she builds a nest, which is usually a cup of mud inside woven grasses and twigs, and that can take weeks to complete. The pair will raise usually 2 broods in a season, or sometimes more. But unfortunately, since the 1970s, the song thrush has been in decline in much of Britain, especially in farmland areas, mainly due to new farming practices, but also the destruction of hedgerows and woodlands that provide much of the thrush's home, as well as safe nester sites, but also the use of pesticides used by farmers and gardeners to kill slugs is also to blame, and that's having an effect on one of their main food sources, snails. The song thrush has actually developed a unique talent for eating snails, which is done by no other bird, although some have been known to steal the fruits of its efforts. In fact, as you can see here, what the thrush will do is it will take a snail shell that has a snail inside, and then it will use a rock or a concrete slab as an anvil and smash the snail shell to pieces against it until it can get to the snail inside. Now, although this is probably the most well-known of the thrush's technique, it gets much of its food in other ways, like as you can see here, one's having a tug of war with a worm in the lawn. Of course, song thrushes are also visitors to gardens. I mean, as long as you have a wild patch in your garden with a thick hedgerow or somewhere on the edge of woodland that means that it can provide the song thrush with places it can find food, a safe place to raise its young, and in spring to perform its famous song. Here is the range of the song thrush. As you can see, they're found in much of Britain. There are summer visitors to this part of Scotland, up in the Highlands. And now, the next animal I'm going to show you is a creature of myth and legend, and also one of Europe's most mysterious birds. It is the barn owl. The barn owl is one of Europe's most mysterious birds, and it's actually one of the British owls, and as you can see, they have a white underside with a light yellowish golden back, and as well as a heart-shaped face, and their face acts almost like a satellite dish, because owls are said to have some of the most incredible hearing of any animal. In fact, and the reason why the face is shaped like a heart is because it can actually hone in on which sound is strongest on which side of the ears it comes from. But also, owls are well known for doing the very distinctive swiveling of their heads, and that's because an owl's eyes are fixed in their sockets, so they can't move their eyes like ours. So what they have to do is they just swivel their heads around. Barn owls are stealth hunters. I mean, they mostly hunt small mammals like rodents, and they use their phenomenal hearing to locate their prey, and they can creep up on it very stealthily because their wings the feathers on the ends of their wings have very soft, fluffy edges which don't make any noise at all. So the barn owl can catch its prey before it realises it's too late. But also, another thing about the barn owl is that it's mostly active at dusk and dawn, so it's what's called crepuscular, which means it's active at dawn and dusk. And that's why its eyes are black. In fact, with owls, if their eyes are black, they're crepuscular, but if their eyes are yellow, they're diurnal, which means they're active in the daytime. But if their eyes are orange, then they're active at night time, so they're nocturnal. Another thing about barn owls is that they're a bird that's always been associated with myths and legends. In fact, It's actually believed that barn owls are the reason people in the Middle Ages believed in ghosts and banshees. I mean, try and imagine it. You're a soldier or an earl or a baron out on battlements of your castle at night. It's sundown, there's mist over the land, and then you see this white shape soaring out across the land, and this loud hissing screech, because barn owls don't hoot, they give a loud hissing screech, which is actually quite a horrible noise. And it's actually believed that that's why people in the Middle Ages believed in ghosts and banshees, but also because owls have quite often been associated with witches, because it's said that witches can turn into owls. And of course, the main nesting sites for a barn owl are usually a hole in a hollow tree, but they do also sometimes nest in barns, outbuildings, churches, or other man-made structures. And they usually have about 8 to 10 eggs, which all hatch into owlets, and the parents will both take turns in providing for their prey. And of course, as many people don't know, owls swallow their prey in one go, and of course they also regurgitate the parts they can't digest, which is usually the skulls, bones, feathers or fur of their prey in a form that's called a pellet. And of course it might be quite disturbing, but I mean, it's what owls have done for millions of years, so it must be effective. Of course, barn owls only have 2 weaknesses when it comes to hunting. The first one is when it's raining, as it does in England, they can't really hear where their prey is because of the raindrops or giving off the sound waves that disorientate and confuse the owls. They can't get their prey, so what they do. But also, barn owls, unfortunately, quite often get hit by cars when they hunt beside roads, and they can't see where they're going when big flashy headlights of a car come by, and they can't get out of the way in time. So quite often they're hit by cars. But although that is a big threat to the barn owl, they aren't endangered. I mean, but they are monitored by the RSPB, and of course to this day they still remain one of the most elusive birds in all of Britain. Of course, here is the range of the barn owls, but also here is the owls of Britain. There's the barn owl and the tawny owl. Of course, those are crepuscular, because so they're active at dusk and dawn, as you can see by the black of their eyes. Then there's the long-eared owl and the little owl, the short-eared owl and the little owl, because their eyes are yellow, so that means they're diurnal, active in the daytime. But then the largest owl in Britain, the long-eared owl, as you can see, its eyes are orange because it's nocturnal, which means it's active at night time. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is another of our most elusive birds of prey, and also the second bird that was most commonly used in falconry. It is the goshawk. Goshawks are the largest hawks in the UK, but they are also very, very elusive birds. And of course, as you can see from this photo of a goshawk, they quite often have a deep orange eye, which always used to frighten me when I was little, because I always used to think that they were always very angry. Goshawks tend to breed in mature woodland, and of course, like many birds of prey, they mate for life, and of course, As I mentioned earlier, goshawks were the second bird of prey after the peregrine that were most commonly used in falconry.